Good day to all. Welcome to Extreme Recap. Sweaty boobs are what you call them. Humidities. Today, I'm going to talk about the 2016 action thriller I Am. The film opens with news channels broadcasting reports of heightening posse brutality and widespread killings in the clamoring city of Columbus, Ohio. That year saw over 300 shootings, resulting in nearly 50 gun-related deaths. When confronted by protesters over a proposed pipeline, Governor John Missouri announces that his office has commissioned its own environmental review to compare with the EPA audit, despite gangsters being heavily involved in the city's crime. In the midst of this unprecedented crime wave, Missouri promptly proclaims the city's newfound peace. Excited by the governor's mention of the work, Abby Hill and her family attended the press conference. Vivian Hell, her mother, is working on the audit. After a few days, Vivian goes to the airport to pick up Stanley Hill, her husband, who is returning from a California job interview. After showing up at the parking garage, they find their vehicle tire level, and Stanley helps transform it. After that, a stranger comes up to them and asks for money, which Stanley politely declines. Stanley is suddenly attacked from behind by another individual. Furthermore, as they mercilessly beat him, one of the aggressors with a flying tattoo all over wounds Vivian and takes her handbag prior to escaping. Stanley, who is severely injured, gets up and rushes to Vivian, where he finds her dead, which breaks his heart. He visits the police headquarters to report the lawbreakers to investigator Gibson and Walker. Analyst Walker suddenly gets some information about his relationship with his significant other, which disturbs him. Stanley goes to the church to claim Vivian's last rites, but because he can't bear the grief, he leaves before anyone arrives. As Vivian was an auditor in his office, her death makes national headlines, and the governor expresses his condolences to her family. He also promises to assist in locating those responsible for the terrible crime. The following day, Stanley gets back to the police headquarters at the analyst's solicitation to distinguish the hoodlums engaged with the occurrence. Based on his description, he successfully identifies the real culprit after carefully studying the lineup. Be that as it may, notwithstanding Stanley's positive ID, the investigators let the aggressor go free. Requesting a clarification for their amateurish way of behaving, Stanley confronts the detectives, and when they tell him there isn't enough evidence, which is an unsatisfactory response, his despair grows. Furthermore, he leaves, acknowledging he can fail to address it. Stanley informs Abby of the corrupt police investigation when he returns from the station. His anger and frustration boil over when he sees Vivian Killer roaming the streets unhindered. In a wrath, he storms back to his house and destroys his dressing room wall, revealing a dark envelope that contained a variety of passports, foreign currency, and lethal weapons. The revelation fills in as an obvious sign of the dinky past Stanley abandoned prior to wedding Vivian. In order to locate those responsible for Vivian's, Stanley contacts Dennis, a former colleague and fellow badass from the past. Stanley sees Dennis, a 20-year-old former partner in the Special Forces, again when he goes to his barbershop. Dennis begs Stanley to reconsider his plan to take revenge, but Stanley is unmoved by Dennis's words and is still determined to take revenge for his wife's death, with the culprits in hand. Names: Dennis uncovers that the police capture them 10 times each year, however peculiarly, nothing at any point happens to them. After that, Stanley focuses on finding them. His first move is to act as a gangster and a tale to go undercover. Nathan, one of the culprits, was in a club nearby. Nathan is seen giving his sweetheart the taken satchel taken from Vivian in the parking area prior. As Stanley watches out for Nathan, he turns out to be progressively uncomfortable under his careful look. In an unexpected move, Nathan crushes his bourbon glass in a frantic endeavor to find Stanley's character. Fleas also appeared when they saw him. A hysterical pursuit follows with Stanley hot behind Nathan. Stanley manages to subdue Nathan as he stands over the deceased man, prepared to deliver the fatal blow, as the two fight behind the bar. The man suggests that Vivian's death was not simply a robbery. Dennis shows up just as things get more serious. When Dennis gets here, they put Nathan's lifeless body out by lighting it and putting it in a trash can. A member of Nathan's gang has secretly captured their heinous deed on camera. He instantly reports it to the famous city wrongdoing master, Lemuel Lamy. The wailing lore demonstrates his violent side by instructing his crew to sever the informant's finger, claiming that the informant should have assisted Nathan rather than recording. Ledmi K then, at that point, orders his team to illuminate Charlie Fly, the man answerable for Vivian's homicide, that he believes him should kill Stanley and Dennis. However, Dennis and Spirit Stanley must be discovered and eliminated first, away from the barbershop and into the safety of his basement, which also houses weapons cache from his time as a member of the force in a secret training chamber. Dennis hacks into the broken phone they took from Nathan's body and finds a. They think it might belong to Charlie or one of his accomplices named Lars, so they call the number and find that it belongs to the zombie tattoo shop where Lars works. This could help them learn more about how Vivian was killed. Lemmy K, on the other hand, makes contact with detectives Gibson and Walker in an effort to have them identify the individuals who killed his men. As the case unfurls, a stunning disclosure becomes visible. The bad investigators are working with Ledmi K to keep his men out of jail in return for his science on a dooming video including lead representative Seythe. The recording shows the lead representative's child perpetrating the severe wrongdoing of killing his sweetheart in the wake of giving her gem drugs. Lemmy Kane has warned that he will release the video if the murderers are not apprehended by the police. Thusly, Gibson meets with lead representative Seythe and illuminates him about Lemmy K's men, because they do not know the identity of the perpetrators or their motives. In order to prevent the release of his son's video, the governor tells the detective to find out. In the interim, Stanley plans to kill Lars when he arrives at Zombie Tattoo, but instead finds another worker. Dennis, on the other hand, rushes to his shop when he hears the alarm, only to meet Charlie and his gang face to face. Charlie quickly realizes that he underestimated the resourceful barber as he tries to force Stanley's name out of Dennis. Dennis defeats them with his skillful moves and emerges victorious from the dangerous situation. Charlie escaped without injury despite being hit by bullets along with his gang members. Continue following Stanley as he gets an I Am Wrath tattoo on his rear. When Stanley insists that Charlie reveal his identity and keeps mentioning Charlie's name, Lars becomes suspicious. Stanley confronts him, enraged, and demands that he reveal Charlie's whereabouts. In spite of having a shaper squeezed against his neck, Stanley cuts Lars' throat as a result of his refusal. Lars's drug shipment is then stolen by Stanley, who then reunites with Dennis at the location where they dispose of the bodies. Tormented by responsibility from his previous existence as a hoodlum and the deficiency of his darling Vivian, Stanley looks for comfort in a congregation there. He limits in a cleric admitting his transgressions and asking for pardoning. In the meantime, Abby goes to Stanley's house to get Vivian's things, but when she gets there, she finds guns and gangster portfolios all over the place. However, Charlie and his men ambushed them before she and her husband could leave, shooting at her car and injuring her. Stanley arrives just in time to sort out the misunderstanding. Abby is also enraged at him for creating the circumstance. We now reside in the governor's residence. Missouri learns of additional passings among Allow Me to Case group. As a result, he declares that he is done with amateurs and needs professionals to complete the criminal investigation. Lemmy, while we wait. When Kay discovers that his drug shipment has been stolen, his annoyance reaches its peak. As a result, he issues Charlie a warning. Stanley concealing in the hairstyling parlor's storm cellar. By stealing Mars' phone, he is successful in obtaining Charlie's number, promising to return the stolen items. Stanley coerces the helpless Charlie into going to a Korean club, where he and Dennis wait for him. Charlie's paranoia takes over once he enters the VIP room, and he misidentifies the thief who took his shipment for another stranger. When the man and his bodyguard pull their guns, the situation quickly gets out of hand. Additionally, Stanley uninvited entered the VIP room. Amid the disorder, Charlie is cornered by Stanley, who demands answers regarding Vivian's death. Let that slip, Charlie. Lemmy K was to blame. Stanley fires before the armed men arrive on the scene and saves Charlie's life, running out of time. Dennis and Stanley make an unhinged escape, defeating them with unwavering collaboration. They manage to take them down and get away just in time to evade the police. After Dennis reveals the dangerous truth about the psychotic gangster, Dennis returns to the basement. For their safety, Lemmy K. Stanley orders his family to pack and move to a hotel. Stanley discovers a shocking report when he returns to his house, revealing that Vivian worked for the governor, was coerced into putting public water safety at risk in the pipeline project for financial gain. Stanley then, at that point, pays attention to Vivian's voice message and learns she was constrained by mshorror to hide the water pollution dangers of the venture. Stanley concludes as a result of this that Vivian's assassination was a cover-up for the findings of her reviews. Lemmy K and his crew suddenly ambush Abby and her family as they attempt to leave in the meantime. Let's say Kate gets Abby to call her father before things get out of hand quickly. Abby attacks Lemmy K henchman with a knife in a daring move to defend herself and her family. However, Lemmy K retaliates by shooting Abby's daughter, putting the future of her family in doubt. Abby sends a hasty text message to Stanley using the nickname of her son because of pressure from the Lemmy case. Joey, not Jimmy, should have warned him about the danger. Stanley receives the message and promptly notifies Dennis, his friend, for backup. Stanley enters the scene through the back door and successfully eliminates one of Lemmy's operatives. In any case, his triumph is fleeting as Allow Me to K catches Monastery and powers Stanley to surrender his weapon. Dennis arrives just in time and fires right when things seem hopeless. Let K use his dependable sniper, grabbing the opportunity. While Dennis is taken aback and shot by one of Lemmy's cases, Stanley lets his rage out on Lemmy K. Dennis recovers with ferocious determination after falling from the railing and kills the shooter. Lemmy K is defeated by Stanley in a brief fight. Additionally, Stanley tries to learn more about Vivian's assassination with the Lemmy K subdued. In any case, previously, Allow Me to K can uncover the genuine culprit, degenerate analyst Gibson. Ruthless weapons Stanley is persuaded to take the easy route by Gibson. Be that as it may, Stanley will not think twice about trustworthiness. As a result, there is a disagreement with Gibson's backup, analyst Walker, who is brought somewhere around Dennis as he rises up out of behind. Gibson makes an attempt to negotiate with Stanley once more, but Stanley refuses and affixes handcuffs to Gibson's car steering wheel. With Walker secured in the storage compartment, Stanley powers Gibson to drive him to Grumpy Person's manor. Not entirely settled to reveal reality behind Vivian's homicide, and the way to get to the house. Gibson reveals the truth about Lemmy K and the governor, as well as the reasons why Lemmy K and his men are immune to attack. Gibson begged Stanley to let him out of his handcuffs when he got to the governor's mansion. However, Stanley hits him in the head and knocks him out. Gibson discovers that the governor's external guards have been eliminated as he regains consciousness. To exacerbate the situation, before he can figure out how to free himself, Stanley has seized the vehicle to detonate, and Walker scarcely figures out how to get away from the storage compartment in time. Stanley storms into the mansion and quickly dispatches the remaining security guards. He eventually defies lead representative Missouri, who promptly shoot at him with a shotgun. The two men engage in a fierce struggle, but Stanley is shot in the head by measure of, who gains the upper hand. In a sincerely charged second, Missouri concedes to killing Stanley's significant other, Vivian, as a result of her refusal to support his corrupt schemes. Maddened, Stanley inverts what is happening and lethally cuts hold. Numerous police officers arrive to surround the governor's mansion as word of the break-in spreads. Stanley leaves the house with a bag of Reserve's chocolate. When he is told to drop it, he instead shoots it at the officers, which causes them to fire. Stanley was knocked down by a hail of bullets. Dennis, he miraculously survives because of the bulletproof vest. Despite the fact that Stanley is in police guardianship, his little girl Nunnery is denied authorization to visit him in the emergency clinic. She fears her dad will be sent someplace he will never again be seen. As a result, she dashes into the rat's hospital room to give him a final hug. Later in the evening, Walker is one of the new police officers who are stationed outside of Stanley's hospital room. In the wake of being downgraded to watch obligation, Walker covertly went into Stanley's room, proposing to kill him. He points his gun at Stanley and says that Stanley is trying to get out of jail. In a dramatic twist, however, it is revealed that Abby left behind a gun disguised as a hug for her father. After Stanley shoots Walker down, it becomes clear that Dennis had already entered the room. Dennis, posing as a doctor, and Stanley managed to flee to, say, Apollo, Brazil, a while later. A postcard from her father is sent to Abby, reassuring her of his safety and expressing gratitude for her assistance. Stanley finally finds peace after avenging the murder of his beloved wife. He is entitled to injustice. Turn on notifications, Please subscribe for more videos like this, and like the channel to support it. Thank you very much for watching.